I don't think it really matters at what stage you end up doing it. I think as long as you don't have that whole deathbed thing where you have all these regrets, it's the worst thing to have regrets in life, and particularly when you have opportunities to do things. Even if you're doing full-time work, you've got weekends, you've got evenings, you can get up early in the morning, you can do these things that are your passions. If you have 100 or 1,000 people that just love everything that you do, even if a small number of people, if you make a difference to someone's life, but doing just something that you would do anyway because it's something that you want to say and a lot of people connect with it, what an honour that is. It's amazing.
Welcome back to Second Verse, the podcast that celebrates indie artists turning or returning to music after life took a different direction. If you've ever wondered whether it's too late to release a debut album, today's guest is proof that some of the most meaningful music emerges in life's second verse. Joining us from Edinburgh, Scotland, Steven McDonald's a songwriter whose debut album, Songs About Love, is filled with quiet dramas, hopeful misadventures, and the strange magic of loving and being loved. And whether it's on vinyl, CD, or streaming, his music is resonating far and wide. Steven didn't get here by accident. After nearly 30 years as a lawyer, he reignited his music career during the pandemic. What started as creative recovery turned into songwriting mentorship, live shows, and his dream collaboration with Scottish legend James Grant. In this episode, we talk about his retro modern sound and why physical music formats matter, the tension between creative fulfillment and financial stability, why live performance still shapes his songwriting, and how he's growing a community both locally and globally. If you're trying to figure out how to start or restart your music career without burning it all down, Steven's story will speak to you. Let's dive in to my conversation with Steven McDonald. Welcome, Steve. Thanks so much for being on Second Verse.
Thanks for having me. Nice to see you.
Good to see you and good to have you here. And I'm always so excited to find out what was it that made my guests fall in love with music. So let's start with music growing up for you. I understand you grew up in a musical family.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was 3-4 years old, I remember first musical memories being around a great grandparent who used to try and teach me things on the piano. Taught me songs that lyrics I really shouldn't have known at that age, to be honest. And and then I had a father who played organ, a grandfather who played accordion and played organ, and so I was surrounded by music from quite an early age, which was great.
That's amazing, not only having a musical family, but having so many generations and being able to tap into all of that musical passion from such a young age.
Yeah, no, it was great. And there's lots of enthusiasm for music. And even the people who weren't musical in the family were quite supportive of everything that was going on. They loved music, listening to music. So it was, they're quite happy to have it at parties and all these things. So it all helps.
And so did you have particular instruments that you really gravitated to, or what did that take on?
Yeah. There was a piano in my grandmother's house, which is actually now in my house. The family bought it in 1951, and wow. And I learned my first songs on that piano. I wrote my first songs on that piano, and it's really needs a proper tuning, but if I get it tuned properly, it'll be great, I think.
Oh, that's amazing. Now, you didn't continue on, though, with music or make that a career early on.
No, that's right. I started off with music, the usual thing people do, covers bands and things like that. And I did join a couple of bands where I was doing original music as well. And then eventually ended up going off to university to study law. So I did that after, I did a business degree, then I did a law degree. And then I had, I suppose, 29 years doing work as a lawyer.
Oh, wow. And then what was your catalyst, though, for coming back to music?
I'd never really stopped doing music, but I think it was definitely, like a lot of people during the pandemic, there was a lot of time and I couldn't rehearse with the band that I play with. And I had all this time to try and explore songwriting again and try to look at songwriting in a more, I suppose, in a more organised way. I'd always done it in a very ad hoc way before, and I needed to have inspiration before writing, whereas I definitely found that during lockdown, I needed to try and I suppose learn properly how to do it, get the toolkit so I could try and learn different ways of writing, where I got inspiration, etc. And so I joined the Songwriting Academy. Like a lot of people that I know, I've kept in touch with, yourself included, met through the Songwriting Academy. And so that made a big difference to me and was the starting point of the journey, really, to get back into things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think about when I would write before in just spurts, and you'd have that inspiration and follow it, but I didn't have the skill set to recognize that I could write till I got the inspiration. And that's how you turn the corner to make it something that's much more prominent in your life, whether it's a full-time career or just a hobby that we take much more seriously and that we are much more productive with. And that was a massive revelation for me. And I think it's just because when you do have those first few songs that really just come out and you just feel all the feels, and it's this amazing thing you've never really experienced, you think that that's the only way this happens. And then you end up with long gaps where you don't do anything. You don't produce any new songs.
Yeah, I think I didn't know in the past when something was working or not. And I didn't understand if one song went down well and was popular with people that listened to my music with the band. I didn't understand really why something was good or not, and I think that's the difference. Now you learn to self-edit and you learn to navigate your way through a song. And also the whole thing about once the first draft is done, in the past, that would have been it. That would have been the song written for me. I would never have gone back to it. I wouldn't go back and do second, third, fourth drafts and keep crafting. Whereas now if I get the first draft, I know that there'll probably be another 4 or 5 at least before I'm going to be anything close to the finished version. So that's a big difference. That's one of the things I learned a lot from getting proper mentoring, I think.
Yeah. Because we also then get really precious about stuff and we don't want to make any changes. Like, this is gold, right? And especially when you feel like that song got dropped in your lap, you're not allowed to touch it. But if you realize that there is art and craft and inspiration, all of these things are just part of a big recipe around music, you can go back and mess with it. And you should. Most of the time we should.
Definitely. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. So what does today look like as far as in any given day, as a songwriter, and what you're doing these days and how much that's part of the mix of what you do?
Sure. I release music as an artist as well. So I've just released an album called Songs About Love, which was on the 25th of July. I had a launch and everything for that. So a lot of my time at the moment is promoting that just now. And since the launch gig, I've been pretty busy trying to arrange live shows. So in Edinburgh, there's a festival, international festival, what they call the Fringe show. I did my first Fringe show tonight, actually. So I came from there back home. And then I've got another one tomorrow and a music festival this weekend, 3 more shows next week, and some live radio, and then a gig in a record shop. So that's all promotion for the album. So pretty busy for the initial promotion, and a single coming out at the end of the month as well. So at the moment, it's that whole artist post-release phase, I guess, is what I'm going through at the moment. But I'm still writing. I'm still trying to write when I can at the time that I have, and so that there's another batch of songs that are coming, which I'll hopefully get onto recording at some point. So it never really stops, the cycle, I guess. You're always either writing or releasing or playing something live, and it just goes around in a circle. I think it's easier now, though, that something has been released, because I've got something there that I can point to, a big project, an album project, and so that'll be there. That's now out there, and I'll be promoting that for the next 10 years, hopefully, while I'm working on other things as well. So hopefully it's the constant cycle now.
Yeah, and I love that we're getting you straight off the stage, basically.
Yeah. It's a nice gig, actually.
That's amazing. And one of the really cool things, too, that I like is the number of formats that you released this album on. And there's this wonderful, cool retro vibe to all of that, in addition to the fact that this is also what's new and current and people are demanding. So talk about all those different elements.
Yeah, I released the album on vinyl, on CD, as well as all the usual streaming platforms. I like a physical product because I go to watch gigs and I like to discover new bands. And when I go to watch bands, I quite often buy their record if they've got something to sell because I like to have something to take away. And that was the thinking behind it with this. There's a bit of a movement in the west of Scotland at the moment, in particular around vinyl and CD. There's a bit of resurgence. I mean, I think it is worldwide, but the label I released the album with, they've kind of pioneered this movement where they have a membership. So people pay, I don't know, £80 or £100, and they get 6 albums a year or something from their artists. So they get that on vinyl. And so it's created a bit of a movement in relation to people that are keen to listen to new Scottish artists on vinyl and CD. And so I wanted to be part of that because I was a member and I liked what they were doing. So I asked them if I could release through their label as well. And thankfully they were up for that. So that was nice.
That's really amazing because I don't think that people, unless they've really started to get into vinyl, understand that it's really a premium product at this point. And it's really hard to get your stuff on vinyl as far as finding a good price break. And even when you do get that all sorted out, then it's just it's hard enough to find a lot of presses that don't have a backlog of a year.
Very true. There's one press in Scotland, and it's nice because it's about 15 minutes drive from my house, which is great. And they were keen to have me, so when the album was being pressed, I was allowed to go and see it, and it was fascinating going in, just watching these records drop onto the spindles and watching the whole thing happening in front of my eyes, and then being handed a product, that they then put on a record player, let me hear it. It was a fascinating process, but really exciting one.
Oh, that's incredible. I looked into it a little bit and had gotten just the lay of the land at some point. And I was really amazed because for something that's growing, partly because it has become such a popular edition, it's also still a very unique kind of process. And it's not like you can just go get one made up like you can go get a t-shirt printed. So it's a really unique and interesting thing. And even though that used to be the only way that these things would be distributed, there's a reason why there's a resurgence around it. So that's really exciting to be able to watch that be done.
Yeah, it's exciting. But I mean, what you were saying about the cost, though, is definitely, I can understand why people go for CD rather than vinyl in terms of cost, because I think it costs for the same number of units made, I think it cost me 10 times as much to get the album pressed. And again, that's okay because it's a small run and everything, and that's fine. And hopefully, if things go well, economies of scale, things will pay off in the long run. But initially, it's a big outlay to begin with, and it's something that people, I suppose, need to be aware of if they're going to go down that route with that choice. It's not a cheap option. The most cost-effective one is definitely CD if you're going to go down that route, because you can get a lot made for the money. It's pretty good for portability and taking to gigs and things like that, and also just profit margins. If you're looking at that, you'll get a much bigger one on a CD. But still, it's lovely to hold it and see that it's something that's nice, because I was able to get a 2-sider lyric sheet in there as well. So it's quite nice to have the inserts where people can actually sit and read the lyrics. Like I used to do when I was growing up. I used to love that, buying albums and sitting reading the lyrics on like a Police album or something like that, and it was an exciting part of buying,
Oh yeah. And it's why I probably know so many of the lyrics so well as I do, but I also knew the people that were part of making these albums, the credits that you can now hit or miss get on some of the streaming platforms. For the longest time, it wasn't a requirement when you uploaded your audio. And so you could have this laundry list of people who contributed to the project who get just about no accolades. And then you have engineers and mixers and mastering engineers and all of these other folks that are part of the process. And I didn't know what any of those things were, but I knew who did them just from reading all the liner notes. And it is something that I definitely missed when we, obviously digital is so great because we can get such accessibility to things, but I'm so grateful that now it is becoming more of a requirement. And
Yeah,
yet you still can't replicate that experience of just curling up with a great album and reading all
absolutely.
this information.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hear cassettes are even making a comeback as well. And I definitely consumed a lot of music on tape back in the day.
Yeah, definitely. And I keep seeing adverts for cassette clubs and things now as well on the socials. I'm starting to see some of these, and people can get memberships and hear music. They join clubs. I think it's a lovely thing, and I'm up for that. Any format, but I still do have a cassette player in my garage. I haven't set it up for years, but it is there if it does come back. So
Yeah, I have one old boombox that I don't get rid of because it's the last one that I had that had a tape deck in it.
yeah, absolutely.
You just
Yeah.
never know when you're going to need to use that. I love the idea of these clubs too. It's sort of like an elevated version of Columbia House back in the day when you get something for a penny. But I think that's a really great way. And it's also such a great avenue for independent artists to have that chance to get in front of people that will love what they're doing, but would never hear about them otherwise. So I think that's an amazing resource. And I'll have to check into what might be available in other regions and see if there are things like that that are happening, because I think that's very, very exciting.
It's really great because there are some artists that are on the label that released my record that I grew up listening to, and I've met some of them now, and it's a great thing. And actually, it's nice when you see somebody that you've grown up loving as an artist. You're like label mates, and they're sharing your posts about your releases and things like that, and it's a huge honour. And it just becomes, I suppose, a bit like the old days when they had, in Scotland, they had Postcard Records, and they had some of these small labels that had a bit of a cult following, so it's become that for, in the west of Scotland anyway, with Last Night from Glasgow. I'm delighted to be part of that. It's really fun.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So talk about some of these artists that you did listen to and some of the influences that have really impacted how you make music today.
Sure. I suppose when I started listening to music and when I started wanting to learn to write, I was probably about, 14, 15 years old. And I was listening to lots of bands like, I suppose, the electronic bands like OMD and Tears for Fears and Depeche Mode and some of these bands, the keyboardy bands, the people that use synths. I was fascinated by that. And then I got more interested in some of the local bands in Scotland. So there were bands, I suppose, like Simple Minds. Everybody knows Simple Minds. But then there were bands that are probably less known worldwide. Bands like the Bluebells, Love and Money, Hipsway, Hue and Cry, Deacon Blue. A lot of them were Glasgow-based or Scottish-based. And lots of these artists, they're all still playing. The difference is these days, they're more likely to have a conversation. You're more likely to get to speak to them now because they're doing smaller gigs and you can chat and things and even be mentored by them. I've been mentored by a couple of my heroes, I guess, which is amazing. And it's nice to hear their stories and everything else from back in the day when you have these preconceived ideas of what they might be like and what they did, and then you actually find out what they're really like and what really happened. It's quite nice. But those bands were all really influential. I suppose even recently I went to see Oasis last week in Edinburgh, a massive gig. And in the 90s, I wasn't as into the 90s bands as much, but some of these big live indie bands from the UK, like Oasis, and it's great that some of them are coming back. And you forget just sometimes how good some of these people actually are at what they do. And when you see them, it's a real lesson.
It's wonderful too that when you do get to meet your heroes, that they live up to what you had hoped, because that's not always a foregone conclusion, but it's so great when you can find out that these are really great people who are generous and wanting to help you to continue to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. Generous with their time, but also just sharing their knowledge, and nothing's a problem. It's quite nice. And one of them, actually, James Grant from Love and Money, played on one of my album tracks as well, which was massive for me, to be honest, to get that to happen. I never would have thought when I was an 18, 19-year-old listening to his music that he'd ever play on one of my records. So that was a huge honor for me that happened.
Oh, amazing. Amazing. That's phenomenal. We'll be back with more after the break. The second verse is sponsored by Attitude Creativity. Many indie music artists don't have a website that grows their audience and reflects who they are, so they get lost in the noise of streaming. Marketing and brand messaging with attitude creativity helps boost your brand and build a site that hits all the right notes. You want to be an artist who stands out from the crowd, and to do that, you need your music to be heard. If your website doesn't reflect who you are or make an impact, you feel like a singer who's been handed a pair of drumsticks instead of a mic. You deserve a website and brand messaging you can be proud of, and that doesn't take time away from your music. As an artist like you, I understand how overwhelming websites and marketing can be. And that's why, putting on my other creative hat, I put my decades of marketing and development experience to work for you. You'll no longer have to apologize for your website. You'll look and feel like a professional with a custom story branded website you can be proud of. And right now, you can get a head start with my free downloadable EPK blueprint and start building your electronic press kit to promote your music. Head to attitudecreativity.com/blueprint to get your copy. That's attitude, ATTITUDE, creativity.com/blueprint. Second verse is brought to you by Singing Straw. Oh, you caught me in the middle of a vocal warm-up. This is one of my favorite ways to wake up my vocal cords before a singing session, or even a nice long conversation for the Second Verse podcast. It's the Singing Straw, a simple but powerful tool for straw phonation, a vocal technique that promotes healthy vocal cord closure and a gentle but mighty way to increase range and identify areas to work on. For me, it was key to regaining my voice after vocal cord paralysis. But you don't have to wait until a vocal injury to use it. In fact, I recommend that you don't. Make the Singing Straw part of your daily routine, and you'll be amazed what your voice can do. Check it out at secondversepod.com/singing straw. So what are some of the challenges, though, of making music this key part of your life and, sort of making this shift, even though I understand you're still practicing law?
Yeah.
And so what does that look like?
Yeah, it's trying to make sure that there's enough income coming in, I guess, to pay for things. I have a 12-year-old daughter as well, so that is a big factor too. So what I have done is I've reduced my working days doing the legal work to, I suppose, 3 days, 3 and a bit days now. So it gives me half the week to do other things. And I'm not somebody who spends a lot of time watching TV or playing video games or doing anything like that. I pretty much do music all the time when I'm not doing, when I'm not working as a lawyer, I'm doing music the rest of the time or doing some acting. So I find that it gives me a lot of time that I can work on things. And again, I think it's sometimes just using the time that you have and using it as best as you can. I find I get up quite early in the morning and I stay up quite late. I suppose I'm an early bird and I can't remember what's the other one, night owl, I think. I'm a bit of both, really. And so I tend to find that, I suppose, I'm driven by the projects I'm working on. So if I feel that I really want to get something done, even if I'm busy doing other things, I'll still try and find time, make it work. So I think you have to be quite driven if you try to have a hybrid career.
Yeah.
You have to use your time really well and plan it accordingly.
Yeah, and I think that's really wise. It's been mentioned a few times on the podcast as well, too, to not just go and wholesale quit your day job if you want to start pursuing this on the side, because there will be these long stretches of things that have to happen along the way as you grow and build a network and collaborate and all of these things where it's not necessarily going to immediately bring in money. And honestly, at the end of the day, maybe the music will never really technically pay for itself. But the blessing is having the resources and the means that support that passion so that you can continue to do this and pursue it and do it with excellence and just continue to follow the paths, whatever they may look like.
I think so. I had one mentor who said to me that the best advice he gives to everybody that asks them that question about whether to give up the day job and go full time, he said, once you're earning the same money as you earn from the day job, that's the time to do it, not before. And I think there've been a few famous people have said the same thing. Rick Rubin, I think, said the same thing, actually, I think on a podcast or something too, about just not diving in until you can actually support yourself, because that creates other stresses in itself if you don't have the means to to support your lifestyle and your family.
Yeah.
It's not sensible, it's risky. It's risky. Fine if there's a second income in the house. There isn't for me, so I don't have the option to fall back on another income. So it's all down to me really, and have to make it work.
Yeah, and it's very hard to be truly creative and fully invested in your music if you're worried about whether you can pay rent and buy groceries. So
Yeah.
there isn't a lot of value in doing that when there are other options. And
Mhm.
I think that dream, especially of the classical music industry, that I'm going to get discovered and then it's just going to be amazing.
Yeah.
One, that's rare. Two, that doesn't really happen anymore. And the third part about that is that those people who got those big paydays weren't paydays. They were loans that they had to repay through
Right.
selling their music. And
Yeah.
so it was just basically upfront cash to get you
Mm.
started. And that didn't work for everybody.
Yeah.
So it never really was what we thought it was. And it's never going to be that way in the current music industry. And so it's really great to make sure that you're covering the bases so that you have the margin and the bandwidth to actually make your art and not make it a hardship.
I think there are different ways of doing it. So, I mean, I think if primarily you want to be a songwriter, if you're writing songs for yourself as an artist, or whether you're writing songs for other people, you can use those skills and teach people to write songs. You can also teach people how to play music, teach them how to sing. There are lots of different ways where you can apply what you know, and even things like, I suppose, custom songs. I get involved
Yeah.
in doing some custom songs for people from time to time, special birthdays and engagements, weddings, sometimes memorials. And I've written all kinds of songs from people that, again, the key is making sure that you retain ownership of the song, and I found that that's not really been a problem when the work I've done. But again, it's a way of getting paid for something and to support your income, but it's still doing something that you love, and it's actually something too that is you're improving your craft by taking these briefs from somebody else or working out what they're looking for, and then creating something for them that will trigger the emotional response and make them happy, give them what they're looking for. And I think as songwriters, then that's something, there's lots of different ways that we can make it work. Even learning production and things, I'm not great at it. I can do it to a point, but I know how to get by with a basic demo. And I suppose over time I'll get better as a producer, but these are all skills that we can learn that are connected with what we want to do. So it doesn't feel as onerous, I guess, in terms of being forced to do something you don't want to do just to be paid. So
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something I think that a lot of prospective artists may not recognize, that there are so many different avenues and none of them is exclusive. So you can't, or you don't have to worry about, I just want to put all of my energy into being this artist. Well, you can still do these other things, and you probably should. And like you
yeah,
said, it actually allows you to create more volume of art in the process because you have to. And then that just comes back to feed in and enhance what you're trying to put out. So all of those repetitions, just like being in the gym, are really helpful
yeah,
and great ways to also build your audience, because some of those audiences don't overlap, but some of them do. And some of them will feed into and support those other connections. And that's really important too, when we're just basically throwing songs out there into a giant
yeah.
ocean right now of music. And so standing out can be really, really difficult.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. It's interesting how people do it. I've got a friend in a songwriting group that I was actually playing a gig last night. He's a really nice guy, and he ended up with 50 million followers or streams on Spotify because he was doing covers. He was doing stripped back cover versions, and he got quite well known doing that. But also, he's writing his own songs. He's doing that, but he's also got an audience already.
Yeah.
So anything he puts out, he has this audience, which is it's pretty clever actually. But I suppose if we all knew what was going to work best, we would all just do it. But it's for ourselves. But it's interesting. There's different ways of doing things, definitely. Yeah.
It's always challenging to figure out what your secret sauce is. But once you do find that community and build into them, then if you try different things, they're going to be excited and enthusiastic because they know you. They feel like they know you and they want to support you and help you
Yeah.
in your different endeavors. And so it's a very powerful thing once you've continued to build that community. You first have to get past the barriers of stopping the scroll and piquing their curiosity. But once you've done that and you've paid it off for them so that they feel like, oh, that was worth it. That was worth my time.
Yeah.
Then they just become progressively more loyal, and it becomes a huge snowball effect. And it's actually really great too when they do follow you as you try these new things. And I think any of us that's found somebody that we're like really excited about and are a big fan, we know we've always kind of done that. Anything you put out, I'm going to buy, and so
Yeah.
this is that at scale
Yeah.
around global audiences.
Definitely. I think it's good to have a global community of connections all over the world and everything. A bit of advice I was given as well, though, was to also look locally and try and get involved in local things, local groups, local writers. And then the interesting thing about that is I found that I've ended up being invited to play at lots of things, support slots and these kind of things where groups of bands and artists will end up arranging things, and then they'll end up inviting each other to do these sort of support things, and their fans get to know who you are when you go on to do the support slot, and vice versa. And suddenly it starts to snowball a bit in one area. And then you hope that it just goes a bit wider, and a couple of local radio stations pick up on things, and then that localized thing starts to snowball and go a bit wider. That's currently where I am at the moment with the music. There's a lot of local stuff happening, but I'm still doing the worldwide stuff as well, like this, and some of the communities that I was involved in before through TSA and things. Yeah, it's just trying everything and then seeing what works. And if you've got limited time, which things you prioritize initially, and then take it from there. So I suppose that's what I'm trying to do just now.
That's awesome. And it's so exciting too that, especially getting back into music with or on account of really the pandemic, for the longest time, all of these local performances weren't an option,
That's right.
of course. And so now, for some artists, thankfully for you, you had some of that experience with live performance. So some of those who just decided, I'm just going to go all in on my music during this lockdown, they may have a hard time kind of getting into that local scene and doing live performance, especially if they have no experience doing that. But if it's something that they maybe did many, many years ago, or that they are willing to just give it a try and grow their skills and their experience and their comfort level with that, there's such great value in that. And it also is very fulfilling to be able to have local community in addition to global community as you're trying to do this thing, because you'll start to find your people. And as artists, we all know how important that is to find our people.
It's a different skill set getting out and playing live. People were predominantly studio based and have done that before, and then they go out and play live. It's a different thing because I find even tonight, a couple of howlers when I was playing songs, and there's a couple of dreadful chords and things like that on the guitar. Again, these things, it's live performance that can happen, and I suppose you learn how much practice you need to get good enough for live work and at a certain level. And it's something that I suppose when I started playing live as a solo artist about maybe 3 years ago, I was really badly prepared for it and played terribly, to begin with. I'm finding now I'm more comfortable now, but it's taken a lot of time and a lot of practice to get to a level that I'm comfortable now, where I feel that I can put on a good show. Yeah, it's a different skill set from doing a bit of recording and then, or even live on the internet when you can't see someone's face, going Facebook Live or something like that. It's a different thing when they're right in front of you.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. And we think sometimes that when we're just producing in the studio that we have all the time in the world and we can fix that song or we can worry that song to death sometimes. But when you have to prepare for live performance, you do have deadlines and limits, but you also can't just continue to play and play and play and play. You've got one shot at it. But I think the great thing about that live experience is how that comes back around to studio performance, because then you realize sometimes, oh, I don't need 600 takes of my vocal. I can do maybe 4 or 5. And even though I do still have those tricks and I can do the things in the studio that I can't do live, it cuts down on that wasted time of, I need to get this perfect. And you probably don't, because perfect tends to take the character out of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the tendency I have if I'm recording at home, I'll probably analyze something to death, and I'll probably keep redoing and nitpicking over vocal takes, and it'll take me 3 times as long. Whereas when I work with a producer, when I did the album tracks, when I was going into the studio to record the vocals, I was doing maybe 3 passes of the whole song. And sometimes if there were bits where you wanted to try something specific in specific places, we would go back and we'd punch in on certain parts. But pretty much there'd be 3 or 4 full takes, and then he would comp the vocals. He would make me sit at the back of the room so I didn't interfere, and I just let him make that call on what he thought the best comp was. And if there was something I just didn't like, then we would go back and fix these things. But it was so much less time involved when it was working that way. And it was all about rehearsing for the studio and for the recordings. I got better performances definitely by working that way, rather than just thinking I can do it line by line until I get a line I'm happy with. And definitely better to do it that way.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I've noticed also when I sometimes take my vocals as if I were doing them live and just kind of go all the way through, then I get a very different performance than when I'm dissecting it and breaking it apart. Yeah. Although I will say that when I record vocals, most of the time I've settled in by the time I get to the second verse. So I have to always go back and redo that first verse, because it doesn't have as much punch as the second one, because I'm getting my groove, and then I realize that, oh yeah, I can do that better. I feel like that is true almost every single time I'm working on a song.
Yeah, pretty much all the ones where I'm tuning vocals, it's always the first verse. It's always the first verse is the one that needs most editing if I'm having to go back and do it. It's the energy as well. The energy is sometimes different. Once you've done maybe a second or a third full pass at the song, you've got into a groove, as you say, and then usually you've got a much better performance by that stage. It's usually the later takes make up most of the comp. I usually find. Yeah,
it's like I finally found it. This is where I needed to be 2 takes ago. But I think for me, it's just become more of a practice to go ahead and go back and redo that first verse and really get the feel to it. Because if I don't do that, many times I would stop myself right in the middle of that first verse because I knew it wasn't working, and then I'd start doing it over and over and over, and then I go back and listen to it later and I'm like, what is happening here? But I've learned to keep it in context, and it actually helps to make the whole thing make a lot more sense. And I think it also starts to feel less daunting too, because you realize this is just 3 minutes. I can go back and do this again a few times. It's not going to take up my whole life. Yeah, it's better perspective that way.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that makes a lot of sense. I can definitely relate to that.
So for anyone who is trying to decide, is this something I want to do? Do I want to pursue my music? Maybe life's gone a different direction, but they've always had this passion. What would be your advice?
Yeah, I think definitely do it, because you're always going to regret not doing these things. And I don't think it really matters at what stage you end up doing it. I think as long as you don't have that... I suppose that whole deathbed thing where you have all these regrets, it's the worst thing to have regrets in life, and particularly when you have opportunities to do things. And as I say, it can work. Even if you're doing full-time work, you've got weekends, you've got evenings, you can get up early in the morning, you can do these things that are your passions. You can make time for these things if you really want to do them. And I'd also say to people too, that don't try and do things just to please other people. I think the best advice, if you have a passion, if it's songwriting, for example, write what you want to write and what makes you happy and what you think is your best work. And don't think, well, it's got to follow a formula or whatever. It's hard to say that after doing TSA because it does help having structure. But if you write to try and please others, you'll not do your best work. Just go with what you feel is your best and something you're passionate about. And I think that's the way I would do it. If I turned the clock back, I would do it that way.
I love that so much because we can very easily get caught up in, I need to sound like this person, or I need to sound like that person, or I want to do sync. So it's always got to be this. And at the end of the day, what people are connecting to in music is the heart. And if you're so far away from what you're passionate about, your heart won't be in it. And there's nothing for them to latch onto unless you just have an incredible hook, and even those things feel a little bit empty and hollow over time if they're not supported by that. And chances are, if you love it, there are 7-8 billion people on the planet. Somebody else is going to love it too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think if you have 100 or 1,000 people that just love everything that you do, I think that what a massive honor that is to have that people invest that time in you and support you and really want that. And it's made a difference to their lives. Even a small number of people, if you make a difference to someone's life by doing what you do, but doing just something that you would do anyway, because it's something that you want to say, when you feel something enough to write it and a lot of people connect with it, what an honor that is. It's amazing.
Absolutely, because those are real people behind those numbers, whether it's streaming numbers or however it is that you're able to interact with people or doing live performance locally as well. And it is such a powerful thing, and it can get lost a little bit when we think, I have to have this audience of millions. And not everybody can, and not everybody has to. It's still, these are real people, and it's a very powerful thing to make that connection. And so we should be very, very grateful and mindful of that, because you're right. That is such a powerful and beautiful thing.
I had one person contacted me after a gig I was playing last night, and there was one song I played that was a new song, and someone from the audience messaged me to say that the words in the chorus moved them because they could imagine where they were when, from the words of the song, because it was about a specific place, but also just a connection between a parent and a child. And it was something that moved them, and it moved them enough to send me a message about it, which was lovely. So that felt really good to get that message today. So,
oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, how can people support you and keep up with what you're doing, and tell them a little bit more about this album?
Sure. Well, the album, not everybody is local to buy it's quite expensive to have something imported, I guess, from overseas. But if they are in the UK or they don't mind the cost, they can buy the album as a physical copy through Last Night from Glasgow, the record shop, and you can find that online. In the meantime, people that like to stream music, it's on all the usual platforms: Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon, all the other ones. I never get too far beyond that because I can never title. I know there's an aggregator who post them on about 50 different sites, but I don't know what everyone uses. So the ones that I look at tend to be Apple Music, Spotify, and sometimes Amazon, but on YouTube and things like that. So they can hear the music on those sites. In terms of finding me on socials, I'm on Facebook under Steven McDonald, songwriter, and on Instagram, it's under Tallboy Performing Arts because I also do some acting. So I've got this performing arts handle, which I've had for years. So if they're Instagram users, they can find me under that. I've got something on TikTok, but I don't really use it very often, to be honest. So they're the main ones, or YouTube. They can find videos and things like that on YouTube as well.
And I'll have everything in the show notes so that everyone can keep up and go directly to all these different places that we all have to maintain, which is a challenge, but I'm grateful for single links and things that we can combine. This has been just so wonderful, and I'm so excited about your new album and all these wonderful things that are happening, and all the music that you have, not only that you've released, but that you have on the horizon. And I'm just so glad that you were on Second Verse.
Well, thank you, Becky. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I really appreciate that you asked me on. I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you too. Much appreciated.
I loved my conversation with Steve. His authenticity, his dedication, and his commitment to doing the music he loves really shine. Here are a few big takeaways that stood out. First, creative growth takes time and repetition. Steve's not afraid to rewrite songs, rehearse relentlessly, and refine his live performance until it connects. Next, stability fuels creativity. He didn't walk away from law overnight. He scaled it back to make space for music. That allowed him to invest in himself without unnecessary pressure. And then community matters. From local radio to global friendships, Steve's building a support system, one show, one story, and one listener at a time. If you're an artist juggling a day job and dreaming of more, here's your action item. Decide what making space looks like for you. Maybe it's reducing work hours, batch recording in off seasons, or simply giving yourself permission to be more than one thing. Your art doesn't need to be all or nothing. It needs to be true. And if you're building your brand as an artist, remember, clarity attracts. A strong message and authentic online presence help you find your people faster. If you need help building that clarity, head to attitudecreativity.com and let's connect. Please follow, rate, and review Second Verse. That simple act helps indie artists like Steve and this podcast reach more listeners. Now to close out the show, here's Steven McDonald with his song, Songs About Love.
So many millions of songs have been written asking what love's about. They might sound pretty, I learn every ditty, but I'm no clearer now. Love raises questions, too many to mention, but one day the truth will ring out. I have a feeling I won't find the real thing listening to songs about love. Yes, I have a feeling I won't find the real thing listening to songs about love. Hearing you, baby, cry for the first time, filling your heart with pride, and then a small hand squeezes your finger, joining you both for life. Those little moments bring out emotions that no song could ever define. I have a feeling I won't find the real thing listening to songs about love. Yes, I have a feeling I won't find the real thing listening to songs about love, 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 love. Listening to songs about love, 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 love. Listening to songs about love. And the more that we know leads to more questions. Watching two people grow old together, traveling side by side, living each moment, both of them knowing each day is precious time. Cuddled together, they promise forever their love will live on when they die. I have a feeling they won't find the real thing listening to songs about love. Yes, I have a feeling they won't find the real thing listening to songs about love, 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 love. Listening to songs about love, 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 love. Listening to songs about love, 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 love. Listening to songs about love, 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 love. love, listening to songs about love.